Right now, today, a number on a government website is the only thing standing between Las Vegas and a genuine catastrophe. As of this morning, July 13th, 2026, the water in Lake Mead sits at 1,071.55 feet above sea level. That is not a victory. That is not a sign that the worst is over. That is the precise, unforgiving measurement of a temporary reprieve. A brief moment to breathe, bought by 2 good winters of snow in mountains 1,000 miles away. And here is the part nobody is talking about. That number means nothing next to the date on the calendar. In less than 6 months, on December 31st, 2026, the entire rulebook that governs this water disintegrates. The century-old agreements, the temporary fixes, the political handshakes, all of it expires, and 7 states, 40 million people, and the 9th largest economy on Earth will stare over a cliff with no plan for what comes next. What happens to a city built on a mirage when the water behind the illusion is gone? To understand the crisis facing Las Vegas, you have to understand a meeting that happened in Santa Fe, New Mexico, more than a century ago. On November 24th, 1922, a group of men gathered to divide the water of the Colorado River. They were engineers, lawyers, politicians. They believed they were building the future of the American West. What they actually built was a time bomb. They based their entire agreement, the Colorado River Compact, on a mathematical error. They had measured the river's flow during one of the wettest periods in the last 1,000 years and concluded the river carried over 16.4 million acre-feet of water each year. That was not a minor miscalculation. It was a foundational lie. The reality, measured over the long, dry course of the 20th and 21st centuries, is that the river only carries about 13.5 million acre-feet. They promised away water that did not exist. For decades, this didn't matter. The massive reservoirs of Lake Mead and Lake Powell, built in the shadow of the Great Depression, stored so much water they masked the deficit. They acted as enormous savings accounts, smoothing out the dry years, creating a buffer between the flawed math and the thirsty ground. That buffer is now gone. This is not a story about a drought. The word is wrong. It implies a temporary condition, a cyclical dry spell that rain will eventually fix. Scientists who study this have a different word, aridification. Dr. Park Williams at UCLA is clear on this point. This isn't a classic drought that will end. This is the new climate of the Southwest. The normal we look back on isn't coming back. Aridification means a permanent shift toward a drier state. Warmer temperatures mean more snow evaporates before it can even melt. It means the snowpack that does survive melts earlier, rushing downstream when it can't be stored. It means the soil itself is thirstier, soaking up runoff before it ever reaches the river. The system is losing water from every direction at once. And here is the arrangement that turns this climate crisis into a political one. From that 1922 compact, California was granted the largest share, 4.4 million acre-feet of water. Arizona received 2.8 million acre-feet. And Nevada, the state that would host the single largest reservoir on the entire river, received the smallest allocation of any state, 300,000 acre-feet. A rounding error. Just one, 8% of the total. A decision made when Las Vegas was a dusty railroad stop with a population of a few thousand. A decision that now threatens a metropolis of 2.3 million residents and 40 million annual visitors. A city built on a water budget it outgrew generations ago. There is a fiction about Las Vegas that you have probably seen. The fountains of the Bellagio, the canals of the Venetian, the glittering spectacle of water in the middle of the Mojave Desert. The assumption is simple: this is the problem. This flagrant, unapologetic excess. That assumption is wrong. The entire Las Vegas resort corridor, all the casinos, all the fountains, all the spectacle, accounts for less than 5% of the region's total water consumption. That is not an opinion. That is the audited, documented data from the Southern Nevada Water Authority. Most of those iconic water features run on non-potable groundwater, a separate supply from the drinking water system, or they use water that is relentlessly recycled. The real story of water in Las Vegas is not happening on the Strip. It's happening in the suburbs. It's happening in the front yards of homes and the useless decorative strips of grass flanking miles of commercial boulevards. And this is where the paradox of Las Vegas begins. The city that looks like the poster child for waste has, out of pure survival instinct, become one of the most aggressive and successful models of urban water conservation on the entire planet. This was not a choice born of environmental virtue. It was a choice born of necessity. John Ensminger, the general manager of the Southern Nevada Water Authority, put it plainly. We have been a leader in water conservation for 20 years, for one reason and one reason only. We have to be. We don't have a choice. So Las Vegas declared war on grass. Not just any grass, non-functional turf, the purely ornamental grass that serves no purpose other than to be looked at and mowed. First, they paid people to rip it out, a cash for grass program that became a model for other cities. Then, they did something no other jurisdiction in the United States had ever done. They banned it. A state law, AB 356, passed in 2021, made it illegal to water non-functional turf on commercial, multifamily, and government properties. The final deadline for full compliance was January 1, 2026. As of today, more than 250 million square feet of pointless grass have been torn out and replaced with desert landscaping, saving an estimated 20 billion gallons of water every single year. This leads to the city's second secret weapon, a piece of water accounting that makes Las Vegas unique among all the cities on the Colorado River. Return flow credits. The concept is simple, but the execution is revolutionary. Every drop of water used indoors in southern Nevada, every shower, every toilet flush, every dishwasher cycle is captured. It flows into one of the most advanced wastewater treatment plants in the world, where it is purified to near distilled quality. Then, it is discharged back into the Las Vegas Wash, a small tributary that flows directly back into Lake Mead. This is not a small detail, it is everything. Because for every gallon of water Nevada returns to the lake, it gets a credit. It means Nevada only truly consumes water that is used outdoors and evaporates. Water for pools. Water for the remaining functional grass. So even though its official allocation is 300,000 acre-feet, because of this aggressive recycling system, its actual net consumption in recent years has been less than 240,000 acre-feet. Nevada is the only major urban user on the river that returns 100% of its indoor water. They are using less than their already tiny allocation. And it still isn't enough. By the summer of 2022, the situation had become desperate. The mega drought, which began in the year 2000, was entering its third decade. Lake Mead was in freefall. On July 27, 2022, the water level hit its modern record low, 1,040.71 feet. This was not just a number. It was a doomsday clock ticking closer to midnight. The city's two existing water intakes. The straws it used to suck water from the lake were in danger of sucking air. The upper intake was already exposed. The second one was getting dangerously close. Las Vegas was facing the literal prospect of its taps running dry. But the Southern Nevada Water Authority had seen this coming. For years, they had been working on a project of breathtaking audacity and astronomical cost. A project born of pure desperation. They called it Intake Number 3. The community called it the third straw. It cost $817 million. It took 7 years of construction. It was an engineering feat on par with the dam that created the lake in the first place. To understand what they did, you have to understand the term dead pool. It is not dramatic shorthand. It is a precise technical designation for the moment a reservoir ceases to function. The dead pool elevation for Lake Mead is 895 feet. At that level, the water is too low to flow through Hoover Dam's penstocks by the force of gravity. It becomes a stranded asset. Water can no longer be released downstream to Arizona, to California, to Mexico. The lake effectively dies. Las Vegas engineers knew this. They saw the lake dropping year after year and asked a terrifying question: what if we need to get water out of a dead lake? The third straw was the answer. They tunneled 3 miles under the lake bed through solid rock to build an intake structure at the very bottom of the reservoir. An armored drain plug, the third straw draws water from an elevation of 860 feet. Read that again, 860 feet. that is 35 feet below dead pool. It is a profound statement of anxiety. They spent nearly $1 billion to build a plumbing system that could still provide water to the city even if the lake was so empty it could no longer serve anyone else. It was an act of hydrologic isolationism, a declaration that if the system collapses, Las Vegas will be the last one with a straw in the glass. It was supposed to be the ultimate insurance policy, the solution, but it only solves one problem. It ensures Las Vegas can access water. It does nothing to ensure the water is actually there. The stark white ring that stains the canyon walls around Lake Mead is the ghost of a fuller past. Calcium carbonate and other minerals baked onto the rock, marking where the water used to be. On a hot day, you can stand on a boat ramp that ends 100 feet from the current shoreline and look up at that white scar sitting high above your head. In July of 1983, the lake was full. It reached its highest ever recorded level, 1,225.8 feet. Today, at 1,071 feet, the lake is only at 34% of its capacity. Trillions of gallons of water. Vanished. That vanishing water doesn't just threaten taps, it threatens the power grid for millions of people across 3 states. The Hoover Dam was not just a water storage project, it was one of the great power generating marvels of the 20th century. At full capacity, its turbines can generate 2,074 megawatts of clean, cheap hydroelectricity. But those turbines are powered by the immense pressure of the water behind them. As the lake level drops, the pressure falls, and so does the power. The dam's ability to generate electricity is severely crippled below an elevation of 1,050 feet. As of today, with the lake at 1,071 feet, it is operating more than 30% below its peak capacity. But there is a more terrifying number on the chart, 950 feet. That is the minimum power pool elevation. If Lake Mead drops below 950 feet, the turbines stop spinning entirely. The Hoover Dam ceases to be a power plant. The lights go out. For context, the record low set in 2022 was just 90 feet above that absolute red line. A few more bad winters, a few more hot summers, and one of the most iconic pieces of American infrastructure becomes a silent, concrete monument to a mismanaged past. This is not a hypothetical. Camille Kalimlim Toton, the Commissioner of the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, stood before Congress on August 16, 2022, and laid down an ultimatum. The system, she said, was at a tipping point. She demanded that the 7 basin states figure out how to collectively conserve an additional 2 to 4 million acre-feet of water. Immediately, her message was not a suggestion. It was a threat. She said if the states could not agree on a plan, and she gave them just 60 days to do it, then the federal government would impose the cuts itself. It was the moment the quiet, backroom negotiations of water managers exploded into a public, basin-wide emergency. The shrinking lake revealed more than just the scale of the crisis. It started revealing its secrets. Long submerged history and darker things began to surface on the newly exposed shores. In 2022, the wreck of a Higgins landing craft emerged from the receding water. The same type of boat that carried soldiers onto the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, this one had sunk in the late 1940s while being used to survey the newly filling reservoir. A relic of World War II, resting in the mud of the Mojave Desert. Then came the bodies. In May of 2022, a barrel was found stuck in the mud. Inside were the skeletal remains of a man who had been shot. Police believe the murder happened in the late 1970s or early 1980s, the height of the mob's influence in Las Vegas. The story went global, a potential mob hit, preserved for 40 years at the bottom of Lake Mead, exposed by climate change. More remains were found in the weeks and months that followed, a grim, macabre byproduct of the falling water levels. Each discovery a new headline, a new reminder that the lake was not just shrinking, it was giving up its dead. The pace of these discoveries has slowed since the modest recovery from the 2022 lows, but the message was delivered. The lake holds our history. All of it. Now, the fight is no longer about history. It is about the immediate future. The 2007 interim guidelines, the tiered system of cuts that has governed shortages for the last 2 decades, expires on December 31st, 2026. That date is a cliff edge, and the states are locked in a brutal, high-stakes negotiation over what comes next. The battle lines are clearly drawn. In one corner are the upper basin states, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico. Their argument is simple. They are developing their water rights more slowly and believe the lower basin has been overusing its share for decades. In the other corner are the lower basin states, California, Arizona, and Nevada. But they are not a unified front. They are a dysfunctional family fighting over an inheritance that has already been spent. At the center of the dispute is California, specifically the Imperial Irrigation District, or ID. The ID is an agricultural district in the scorching Imperial Valley of Southern California. It holds the single largest and most senior water rights on the entire Colorado River. This is a critical point. Their rights predate the Hoover Dam, predate the founding of most cities in the West. Under the law of the river, a tangled century-long collection of compacts, court cases, and decrees, senior rights holders get their full share of water before junior rights holders get a single drop. Nevada and the Central Arizona Project have some of the most junior rights on the river. This is why, under the current rules, Arizona and Nevada were forced to take devastating cuts long before California had to give up any water. J.B. Hamby, the chairman of the Colorado River Board of California and a lead negotiator, has described the situation in stark terms. We are 150 feet from 25 million Americans losing access to Colorado River water. He is not wrong. But California's position is that its senior rights are sacrosanct. They see themselves as defending a legal right established a century ago. Arizona and Nevada see it differently. They see California refusing to share the burden of a crisis that affects everyone. Tom Bushatsky, Arizona's top water official, has been at the forefront of this fight. Representing a state that has seen its water supply for farmers in Pinal County completely cut off to protect the cities. The tension is palpable. And the single biggest point of contention, the issue that could derail the entire negotiation, comes down to two words: evaporation losses. Every year, about 1.5 million acre-feet of water, 5 times Nevada's entire annual allocation, simply evaporates from the reservoirs and canals in the lower basin before it ever reaches a farm or a city tap. It vanishes into the hot desert air. The question is, whose water is it? Who gets charged for that loss? California argues it's a system loss, and the deficit should be shared by everyone, or absorbed by the system itself before allocations are made. Arizona and Nevada argue that the losses should be deducted from users' allocations after the water is released from the dam. This is not a small accounting dispute. It is a fight over a massive volume of water, and whoever loses will have to find a way to live with significantly less. The states submitted competing proposals in March 2026. They are fundamentally incompatible. With the final deadline now, just months away, there is no agreement in sight. This is the nightmare scenario. What if they can't make a deal? What happens on January 1st, 2027, if the states are still at an impasse? The answer is that the federal government, through the Bureau of Reclamation, would likely be forced to step in and impose its own rules, to take control of the taps for 40 million Americans. This is an outcome nobody wants. It would trigger a legal and political firestorm, a decade of court battles challenging federal authority and state sovereignty, a level of chaos the West has never seen. So we are left here. Today, watching a number on a screen, 1,071.55 feet, a level that is dangerously low, yet feels deceptively safe compared to the abyss of 2022. It has created a dangerous complacency. The wet winters of 2023 and 2025 saved the system from immediate collapse, but they solved nothing. They refilled the reservoir just enough to take the political pressure off, to allow the hardest decisions to be postponed for one more year, one more negotiating session. But the structural deficit remains. The aridification continues. The flawed math of 1922 is still on the books. Las Vegas did what it had to do. It ripped out its lawns. It recycles every drop it can. It spent almost $1 billion to drill a drain to the bottom of the lake. The city has done more to conserve than any other. Its citizens have seen their per capita water use drop by nearly 50% since 2002, even as the population boomed. And still, the fate of their city is not in their hands. It rests on the snowpack in the Rocky Mountains. It rests on the demands of an alfalfa farm in the Imperial Valley. It rests in the hands of negotiators arguing in a locked room over who should pay for water that turns into clouds. The third straw is not a solution. It is a monument to a terrifying possibility. The possibility that the entire collaborative framework of the Colorado River will fail, and it will be every state, every city, for itself. The crisis has been slow, grinding, a 20-year decline. The end, if it comes, will be fast. It will be the failure of a negotiation. The passing of a deadline. The turning of a key in Washington, D.C. That changes who controls the water for the entire American Southwest. The bathtub ring on the walls of Lake Mead is a warning. It is a high watermark of a climate we no longer live in and a promise we could no longer keep. The question is no longer if the system is broken. The only question left